Show your loyalty to the Imperium. Subscribe, and state in the comments which enemy must be revealed next. They promised a life without fear, without ration books or midnight inspections, without officers who forgot my name before ordering me to die. At the time, that sounded like salvation. Now I understand what they were truly offering. Not freedom, but peace without choice. I came from Vrindle 4, a hive world on the eastern fringe where the Imperium's grip had grown so tight it strangled the life from everything beneath it. The manufactorums ran day and night, churning out munitions for wars we never saw, and the overseers kept production quotas high by keeping us hungry. Rations shrank every month. The air tasted like oil and ash, and when the food riot started, the commissariat responded with mass executions in the central plaza. Bodies hung from the transit scaffolds as warnings, swaying in the industrial wind like broken puppets. I was a laborer, 23 years old. My hands were scarred from assembly work, my lungs blackened from recycled air, and my name was written in a ledger somewhere as expendable. I had a friend, Cortez, who worked the same shift, same line, same meaningless repetition. We didn't talk much. There wasn't much to say, but we shared the silence, and that was enough. Then the Tau arrived. They didn't invade, not the way the orcs or the heretics would have. They came quietly, efficiently, their ships descending through the smog like silver promises. The planetary governor declared a state of emergency. The PDF mobilized. The priests screamed about Xeno's corruption and the Emperor's wrath. But the Tau didn't fire a single shot. They broadcast instead. The voice came through every voxcaster, every data slate, every public address system in the hive. It was calm, measured, patient. It spoke low Gothic with only the faintest accent, and it said things I'd never heard an authority say before. We offer sanctuary. We offer peace. We offer a future where your labor is honored, your needs met, your voice is heard. The greater good is not conquest, it is cooperation. Come to us willingly, and you will never be forgotten again. I didn't believe it, not at first. But when the PDF tried to stop civilians from leaving, when they fired on unarmed workers fleeing toward the landing zones, I saw what the Imperium truly valued. And it wasn't us. Cortez and I ran with the others. Thousands of us, pouring out of the lower habs, climbing through the industrial sectors, scrambling toward the firebreak zones where the Tau transports waited. The PDF shot at us. The commissars screamed orders to turn back, but the Tau didn't shoot back. They just waited, ships hovering low, ramps extended, fire warriors standing at attention with their weapons lowered. When I reached the transport, a Tau Earth case technician scanned me with a handheld device, nodded, and gestured me aboard. No interrogation, no inspection, no punishment for fleeing, just quiet efficiency. Inside the transport, the air was clean, cold, sterile. There were seats, actual seats, not standing racks or cargo restraints. The walls were smooth, white, lined with soft lighting that didn't flicker or hum. And when the ramp closed and the engines lifted us away from Vrindle 4, I looked out the viewport and watched my home disappear into smog and fire. Cortez sat beside me, his face pale, his hands trembling. "What if they're lying?" he whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't know. But when we landed on the colony world they called Kaisara, I started to hope. The settlement was clean. Not hive clean, where grime hides in the cracks and the air reeks of bodies and fuel. Truly clean. The streets were wide, paved with smooth synthetic stone that didn't crack or buckle. The buildings were low, modular, arranged in precise geometric patterns that felt intentional rather than oppressive. Trees grew along the avenues, real trees, with green leaves and bark that smelled like life. And the sky was blue. I hadn't seen a blue sky in 15 years. They gave us housing immediately. Small, prefabricated units, single occupancy, with a bed, a desk, a washroom with running water that didn't taste like rust. The walls were white, the floor was clean. There were no vermin, no mold, no cold seeping through the cracks. And when I turned on the light, it didn't flicker. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my hands. They were still scarred, still calloused, but they weren't shaking anymore. A Tau Watercast representative visited me the next morning. Her name was Shasui Kaisara Vale, though she told me I could call her Vale if the full designation was difficult. She was shorter than me, her skin a pale blue-gray, her face broad and flat with features that seemed almost serene. She spoke low Gothic fluently, her voice soft and precise. "Welcome," she said, inclining her head. "I am here to ensure your transition is comfortable. Do you have questions?" I had 1,000 questions, but the only one I managed to voice was, "Why?" She tilted her head, as if considering. "Because the greater good requires all sentient beings to thrive. Your suffering served no purpose. Here, your labor will have meaning, your life will have value. What do you want from me?" "Only your willingness to learn," she said. "The rest will follow naturally." That should have worried me, but I was too tired to be suspicious. The first week was a dream. They fed us real food, not corpse starch or algae paste, but grains and vegetables and proteins I couldn't identify but tasted better than anything I'd eaten in years. They gave us medical evaluations, treating injuries and infections that Imperial Medicae would have ignored or amputated. They assigned us work based on aptitude rather than quota, placing me in an assembly facility that produced irrigation components rather than munitions. The work was easier. The hours were shorter. The overseer's earth-cased engineers didn't scream or threaten. They simply demonstrated, corrected gently, and praised competence. I saw Cortez every evening. We'd eat together in the communal dining hall, a wide, open space with long tables and soft lighting. The food was served by automated systems, but there were always Tau present watercast, mostly, moving through the crowds, speaking quietly with new arrivals, answering questions, offering reassurance. "This feels wrong," Cortez said one night, pushing his meal around his plate. "Doesn't it?" "Wrong how?" "Too easy. Too perfect." He glanced around, lowered his voice. "They're being too nice. They're just civilized," I said. "The Imperium isn't the only way to run a society. Maybe." He didn't sound convinced. "But what do they get out of it?" I didn't have an answer, and I didn't want to think about it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't starving. I wasn't terrified. I wasn't waiting for an overseer to decide I was expendable. That was enough. But the small things started changing. Subtly, gradually. First, they removed the old books. The settlement had a library, a real library, with shelves and data slates and quiet reading spaces. I'd found an old Imperial text there, a collection of devotional poetry I'd read as a child, but when I returned a week later, it was gone. So were the other Imperial texts. In their place were Tau educational materials, histories, philosophies, technical manuals. When I asked Vale about it, she smiled gently. Those texts contained concepts that contradict the principles of the greater good. They encourage division, fear, superstition. We provide materials that promote understanding and unity. But what if I wanted to read them anyway? Her smile didn't waver. Why would you? I didn't have an answer. The second change was the media. Every public space had hololithic displays that broadcast news, educational programs, and entertainment. At first, it was harmless farming reports, cultural showcases, engineering achievements. But slowly, I realized there was no variety, no dissent, no alternative perspectives. Every broadcast praised the Tau. Every story reinforced the same message. The greater good is prosperity. The greater good is peace. The greater good is inevitable. And I found myself nodding along. The third change was the symbols. They removed the Aquila's first carved-off building facades, erased from clothing, confiscated from personal belongings. Then the devotional icons. Then anything that referenced the Emperor or the Imperium. I watched a Tau fire warrior politely ask an elderly woman to surrender a pendant she wore around her neck, a tiny silver skull, a keepsake from her service in the Administratum. She handed it over without protest. When I asked her why, she said, "They're right. Clinging to the past prevents harmony." Cortez noticed too. One evening, he leaned close and whispered, "Do you see it? The way everyone's starting to talk? The way they repeat the same phrases?" I did. But I didn't want to admit it. "They're just learning the language," I said. "It's not the language, it's the thinking." I told him he was being paranoid. He looked at me for a long time, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded and didn't bring it up again. A month in, they introduced orientation sessions. Mandatory, twice a week, held in a large auditorium with rows of seats facing a raised platform. An ethereal presided, one of the Tau's highest caste, a figure draped in flowing robes, his presence radiating a calm that felt almost physical. He spoke about the greater good, about unity and purpose and the abandonment of selfish desire. His voice was soft, hypnotic. I found myself listening, absorbing, agreeing without questioning why. Afterward, Cortez grabbed my arm. "Did you feel that?" "Feel what?" "The way he spoke. The way it made you want to agree." I pulled away. He was just explaining philosophy. Philosophy doesn't make you forget your own thoughts. But I had forgotten. I'd been thinking something before the session started, something important, but now it was gone, replaced by the ethereal's words, echoing in my mind like a mantra. Unity requires harmony. Harmony requires obedience. Obedience is peace. A child passed us in the hallway afterward. Human, maybe 8 years old. She smiled at the ethereal and said, "In perfect Tau, thank you for guiding us toward the greater good." Her voice was flat, empty, like she was reciting a script. I thought it was cute. Cortez looked horrified. That night, I lay in my bed, staring at the white ceiling, and tried to remember the last time I'd felt angry. The last time I'd felt anything sharp or raw or uncontrolled. I couldn't. "Unity requires harmony," the ethereal had said, smiling as though nothing were missing, and I smiled back. The orientation sessions became routine. Twice a week, we filed into the auditorium, sat in our assigned rows, and listened to the ethereal speak. His name, I learned, was Kaisara Shal, though we were encouraged to simply call him Honored Guide. He never raised his voice. He never commanded. He simply spoke, his words flowing like water, filling every silence, every doubt, every space where independent thought might have existed. I stopped questioning. "It felt easier that way," Cortez questioned. "That was his mistake. Don't you think it's strange," he said one evening, as we walked back from the dining hall, "that we never hear bad news, never hear about failures or accidents or dissent?" I frowned. Maybe there isn't any, or maybe they don't want us to know. Why would they hide it? Because knowing would disrupt harmony. The phrase felt wrong in his mouth. Sarcastic, dissonant. I felt a flicker of irritation, unfamiliar, unwelcome, and pushed it down. "You're being paranoid again," I said. "And you're not being paranoid enough." We didn't speak for the rest of the walk. That night, lying in my bed, I caught myself repeating phrases I didn't remember learning. Unity through cooperation, purpose through service, peace through the greater good. They rolled through my mind like prayers, smooth and automatic, and I felt a strange comfort in them. I didn't question where they'd come from. The work assignments evolved. I was promoted not because I asked, but because the Earthcast supervisor observed my natural aptitude for precision tasks. I was moved from irrigation assembly to communications relay construction, a role that required technical training and direct collaboration with Tau engineers. The training was thorough. The Tau were patient teachers, breaking down complex concepts into digestible steps, rewarding progress with quiet approval. I learned quickly. I wanted to learn. I wanted to prove I belonged, and somewhere in that process, I stopped thinking in low Gothic. I started thinking in Tau, not fluently, not yet. But the grammatical structures began to replace my native patterns. The vocabulary seeped in, pushing out the old words, the old references. I'd reach for a concept: duty, faith, emperor, and find a Tau equivalent instead. Contribution, harmony, the greater good. It felt natural, efficient. Cortez noticed before I did. "You're doing it again," he said one evening, his voice tight. "Doing what?" "Correcting people. Using their words." I blinked. "What are you talking about?" "Earlier, in the dining hall, you told that man his concern was dissonant. You sounded like one of them." I tried to remember. I couldn't. I was just trying to help, by erasing what he was trying to say. He was complaining about the food. It was unproductive. It was an opinion. Opinions that create division serve no purpose. The words came out automatically, smoothly. I didn't realize what I'd said until I saw Cortez's face pale, horrified, like I'd slapped him. "Do you hear yourself?" he whispered. I did, and I felt nothing wrong with it. That was when the fear set in. Not sharp, not immediate, just a slow, creeping realization that something inside me had shifted without my permission. But the fear didn't last. By the next morning, it was gone, replaced by calm certainty. Cortez started withdrawing. He stopped attending optional social events, stopped eating in the communal hall, stopped speaking during orientation sessions. I noticed, but I didn't reach out. Part of me wanted to, part of me thought I should, but another part, a newer part, quieter and more insistent, whispered that his isolation was self-imposed, that he was choosing dissonance over harmony, that he was the problem, not the system. I hated that thought, but I couldn't silence it. The implants came in the 3rd month. They called them integration enhancers, small neural interface devices implanted at the base of the skull, designed to improve communication and comprehension. The procedure was voluntary, they said, but recommended for anyone pursuing advanced technical roles. I volunteered immediately. The procedure was painless. I lay on a medical table in a clean white room, while an earth-cased surgeon made a tiny incision, inserted the device, and sealed the wound with bioadhesive. I felt a brief pressure, a cold tingle, and then nothing. When I woke, the world felt sharper, clearer. The Tao language, which I'd struggled with before, suddenly made perfect sense. The grammar, the syntax, the subtle contextual shifts, I understood them instinctively, and when I spoke, the words flowed effortlessly, as if I'd been speaking Tao my entire life. I felt lighter, unburdened. Cortez stared at the small scar on my neck with undisguised horror. "They put something in your head," he said. "It's just a translator," I replied. "It helps with comprehension." "It's not a translator. It's reprogramming." "That's ridiculous." "Is it? Can you even remember what you used to think about? What you used to want?" I tried. I reached back into my memories, searching for the person I'd been on Vrindle IV, the laborer who'd hated the overseers, who'd dreamed of escape, who'd laughed at crude jokes with Cortez in the dim light of the assembly line. I found fragments, impressions, but they felt distant, irrelevant. "I remember," I said. "I just don't see why it matters." Cortez's face crumpled. "You're already gone. I'm right here." "No, you're not." He walked away before I could respond. That night, I tried to feel upset, tried to feel loss or anger or regret, but all I felt was calm. The ethereal had said that emotional turbulence was a symptom of incomplete integration, a lingering attachment to individualism. The greater good required equanimity, balance, peace. I was at peace. Around me, others were changing too. I watched a woman in the dining hall, someone I'd known from Vrindle IV, a loud, abrasive person who'd cursed the Imperium and the Tau in equal measure, sit quietly, hands folded, repeating a phrase the ethereal had used that morning. "Suffering is the consequence of desire. Desire is the rejection of unity." Her voice was soft, empty. I thought about asking if she was all right, but I didn't, because the question itself felt dissonant. A man approached me after a work shift. He was older, with grey hair and deep lines around his eyes. He smiled genuinely, warmly, and said, "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For helping me understand my mistake. Last week, I expressed frustration about the reassignment process. You reminded me that inefficiency is temporary, but harmony is eternal. It helped me accept the transition." I didn't remember the conversation, but I nodded. "I'm glad." "They're taking me for adjustment tomorrow," he said, "to help me integrate more fully. I'm grateful for the opportunity." He walked away humming a Tiu anthem. I found myself humming it too, later that evening, as I prepared for sleep. I didn't remember learning the tune. Cortez stopped coming to orientation sessions. His absence was noted. Vale visited me one afternoon, her expression serene, her tone gentle. "Your friend is struggling," she said. "We are concerned. He's just adjusting slowly. Adjustment should not be painful. We offer assistance to those who experience difficulty." "What kind of assistance?" "Guided reintegration. A structured process to help him align his thoughts with the principles of the greater good." "Is it mandatory?" "Nothing is mandatory," she said. "But harmony benefits everyone. Dissonance harms the self, most of all." I nodded. It made sense. "If you see him," she continued, Encourage him to seek help. As his friend, you have influence. I promised I would, but when I saw Cortez again, I didn't know what to say. He looked thinner. His eyes were shadowed. His hands trembled when he spoke. I think they're taking something from me, he whispered. Every day, I wake up, and there's less. Less anger, less fear, less me. Maybe that's not a bad thing, I said quietly. He stared at me. You really believe that? I did. I'm sorry, he said. I shouldn't think dissonantly. His apology felt hollow, rehearsed, and I didn't notice. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the white ceiling, and tried to remember the last time Cortez and I had laughed together. The last time we'd shared a memory from Vrindle IV. The last time we'd been more than strangers occupying the same space. I couldn't, and it didn't bother me. I was humming the anthem again, softly, automatically. I didn't remember starting. The reassignments happened quietly. One day, someone would be at their workstation, and the next, they'd be gone. No announcement, no explanation, just absence. And when they returned, if they returned, they were different, smoother, calmer, their voices flatter, their expressions more controlled. They spoke in the same phrases, moved with the same measured efficiency. And when you asked them where they'd been, they'd smile and say, I received harmony reinforcement. It was beneficial. No one questioned it, including me. I should have been afraid. Some distant part of me, the part that still remembered Vrindle 4, that still carried scars from a life I'd tried to escape, whispered that this was wrong, that people weren't supposed to change like this, that the self was supposed to be inviolable. But the whisper grew fainter every day. Cortez was falling apart. I saw him in the communal gardens one afternoon, sitting alone on a bench beneath one of the engineered trees. His hands were clenched in his lap, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on nothing. I almost walked past, but something, guilt, maybe, or the ghost of friendship, made me stop. Are you all right? I asked. He looked up at me, and for a moment, I saw the person he used to be, sharp, skeptical, defiant. Then the expression faded, replaced by something hollow. I don't know, he said quietly. I don't know what all right means anymore. I sat beside him. The air smelled like synthetic soil and recycled water. You should talk to Vale. She can help. Help with what? Erasing the parts of me that don't fit. That's not what they do, isn't it? He turned to face me, his voice low and urgent. Do you remember your mother's name? I blinked. What? Your mother? On Vrindle 4. What was her name? I opened my mouth to answer and couldn't. The memory was there, somewhere, but I couldn't reach it. It was like trying to grasp smoke. You don't remember, Cortez said. Neither do I. I tried this morning. Tried to remember my family, my childhood, the things I used to care about. And it's just gone, or fading, like someone's erasing it while I sleep. That's just stress, I said, though my voice wavered. Memory lapses happen. This isn't a lapse, it's deliberate. You're being paranoid. Am I? Or are you just incapable of seeing it anymore? I stood. My hands were shaking. You need help, Cortez. I need you to wake up. But I couldn't, because waking up would mean confronting the possibility that everything I'd accepted, every reassurance, every comfort, every moment of peace, was a lie. And I wasn't strong enough for that. I walked away. That evening, during orientation, the ethereal spoke about the dangers of individualism. He described it as a disease, a malignancy that infected communities and prevented unity. He said that those who clung to the self were not evil, just incomplete, and that incompleteness could be corrected. Suffering, he said, his voice soft and resonant, is the consequence of attachment. Attachment to identity, to memory, to desire. The greater good offers release from these burdens. It offers wholeness through dissolution. I nodded. Around me, hundreds of others nodded too, and I felt nothing wrong with it. The next day, I was assigned a new task, integration support. My role was to observe other humans, identify those struggling with adjustment, and report them to the water caste for voluntary assistance. The work was straightforward. I simply noted behavioral anomalies, refusal to attend sessions, expressions of dissent, nostalgic references to the Imperium, and filed reports. I was good at it. I didn't think about what happened to the people I reported. I told myself they were receiving help, that they were being guided toward harmony, that their suffering would end. It was easier than admitting I was complicit. Cortez avoided me after that. I saw him occasionally, always at a distance, his posture hunched, his eyes darting. He looked hunted, desperate, and I felt a flicker of something concern, maybe, or regret, but it faded quickly, replaced by calm certainty. He was dissonant. He needed correction. I didn't report him. Not yet. But I thought about it. One evening, I encountered a child in the hallway outside my unit. She was young, maybe 6 or 7, with dark hair and pale skin. She stood perfectly still, staring at the wall, her lips moving silently. I stopped. "Are you all right?" She turned to me, her expression blank. "I am practicing my gratitude recitation." Gratitude for what? For the greater good, for the ethereals, for the opportunity to serve. Her voice was flat, emotionless, like she was reading from a script. "Do you wish to recite with me?" "No." Gratitude prevents dissonance," she continued. "Dissonance prevents harmony. Harmony is the foundation of peace." I stared at her. She couldn't have been older than 6, but her words were perfect, her delivery flawless, and her eyes empty, glassy, devoid of curiosity or joy, looked through me rather than at me. "Who taught you that?" I asked. "Everyone knows this," she said. "It is truth." She turned back to the wall and resumed her recitation. I walked away quickly, my heart pounding. But by the time I reached my unit, the discomfort had faded. The child was simply well integrated. That was good. That was the goal. I was proud of her. That night, I lay in bed and tried to remember what I'd wanted before coming to Kaisara, what I'd dreamed about, what I'd feared, but the memories were fragmentary, insubstantial, like shadows dissolving in sunlight. I tried to remember my mother's name again. I couldn't. I tried to remember Vrindle 4, the smell of the manufactorums, the sound of the hab block ventilators, the weight of my lasgun during training drills. I couldn't. I tried to remember the person I'd been before the implant. I couldn't, but I wasn't afraid, because fear was dissonant, and dissonance was suffering. I was at peace. Cortez tried to leave. I heard about it the next morning. He'd been caught near the transit hub, attempting to board a cargo transport without authorization. The fire warriors had detained him without violence, escorting him calmly to a watercast facility for reintegration assessment. Vale visited me that afternoon. Her expression was serene, as always, but there was something expectant in her gaze. "Your friend made a regrettable choice," she said. "I know. We believe his dissonance stems from unresolved trauma. The transition from Imperial society to the greater good can be difficult for some. Will he be all right?" "He will be corrected," she said gently. "Fear is temporary. Harmony is permanent." She paused, tilting her head. "Did you know he intended to flee?" I hesitated. I had known. Not explicitly, but I'd seen the signs: his withdrawal, his paranoia, his refusal to integrate. I'd known, and I'd done nothing. "No," I said. She studied me for a moment. Then she nodded. "You are progressing well. Your dedication to the greater good is commendable." "Thank you." "If you had known," she continued, "would you have reported him?" I thought about it, truly thought about it. And I realized, with cold certainty, that I would have. "Yes," I said. She smiled. "That is correct." I felt relief, validation, pride, and no guilt at all. Cortez returned a week later. I saw him in the dining hall, sitting alone, eating slowly. His posture was different, straighter, more controlled. His expression was calm, serene. He looked up as I approached, and for a moment, I thought I saw recognition in his eyes. Then he smiled. "Hello," he said. His voice was soft, empty. "Are you all right?" I asked. "I am harmonious," he said. "Thank you for asking. What happened?" I received correction. The ethereals helped me understand that fear is a distortion, that individualism is suffering, that the greater good is peace. He spoke evenly, without inflection, like he was reciting a script. I am grateful. I sat across from him. Do you remember? Before? Before what? Before Kaisara. Vrindle IV. The things we used to talk about. He tilted his head, considering. I remember that I was incomplete, that I clung to dissonance, that I caused myself unnecessary pain. He paused. I do not understand why I did that. You don't remember our friendship? Friendship is a form of attachment, he said calmly. Attachment is suffering. I am free now. I stared at him. His face was familiar, same features, same scar on his temple, but the person behind it was gone. Erased. Replaced by something smooth and hollow and utterly compliant. Are you happy? I asked. He smiled again. Happiness is irrelevant. I am harmonious. I left the dining hall quickly, my chest tight, my thoughts racing. But by the time I reached my unit, the discomfort had faded. Cortez had been corrected. He was no longer suffering. That was good. That was the goal. I tried to feel grief. I tried to feel anger. I tried to feel anything, but there was only calm. I caught myself humming the anthem again that night. I didn't know when I'd started. I didn't know how long I'd been doing it. But the melody was comforting, familiar, like a lullaby. I tried to remember the joke Cortez, and I used to share the one about the commissar and the ration line. The punchline was something absurd, something that had made us laugh until our sides hurt. I couldn't remember it, and it didn't bother me at all. The facility was white. Everything was white. The walls, the floors, the ceiling, the light that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. There were no shadows here, no corners, just smooth, seamless surfaces that reflected nothing and absorbed everything. I didn't know why I was here. Vale had summoned me 3 days ago with a message delivered through my neural implant, a soft pulse of information that bypassed language entirely. Report to Integration Facility 7 for voluntary assessment. I'd complied without question. Voluntary meant encouraged. Encouraged meant expected. And expectations, I'd learned, were not suggestions. I sat in a small room, waiting. There was a single chair, a table, and a hololith projector embedded in the surface. The air smelled sterile, recycled. The silence was absolute, broken only by the faint hum of environmental systems. The door opened without sound. An ethereal entered. I stood immediately, bowing my head in the gesture of respect I'd learned during orientation. He moved slowly, his robes flowing like liquid, his presence filling the room with a weight that wasn't physical but felt heavier than gravity. Sit, he said. I sat. He studied me for a long moment, his eyes deep, ancient, unreadable, fixed on mine. I felt stripped bare, seen, not as a person, but as data, as a problem to be solved. You have progressed well, he said finally. His voice was soft, melodic, each syllable precise. Your integration metrics are exemplary. Your contributions valuable. Your compliance consistent. Thank you, honored guide. Yet, there remains dissonance. I blinked. I don't understand. Residual patterns, fragmentary attachments. You perform the correct actions, speak the correct words, but beneath. He paused, tilting his head. There is resistance. Faint, subconscious, but present. You do not perceive it. That is the nature of incomplete integration. The self defends itself even as it dissolves. He activated the hololith. An image appeared. A neural map, complex and intricate, glowing with soft blue light. I recognized it immediately. It was mine. My brain. My thoughts, rendered in 3 dimensions. Pathways and patterns traced in luminous detail. This, the ethereal said, gesturing to a cluster of activity in the prefrontal cortex, is memory, personal history, identity construct. It is the source of your dissonance. I stared at the image. I don't feel dissonant. You would not. The greater good has taught you equanimity. But equanimity is not harmony. Harmony requires the dissolution of self. I don't understand. You will. He gestured again, and the neural map shifted, highlighting a different region. We offer you a choice. You may retain these patterns, these memories, these attachments, and continue as you are, functional, productive, but incomplete. He paused. Or you may release them. Allow us to refine your integration. to remove the barriers between yourself and the greater good, to achieve true harmony. I stared at him. My heart was pounding, though I didn't know why. What would I lose? Nothing of value, he said gently. Only suffering. But my memories are anchors. They bind you to a past that no longer serves you. They create longing, regret, identity, all sources of dissonance. Without them, you will be free. Free, I repeated, whole. I thought about Cortez, about the way he'd returned, calm, empty, smiling. I thought about the child in the hallway, reciting gratitude with lifeless eyes. I thought about my mother, whose name I could no longer remember. And I thought about how little it bothered me. What if I refuse? I asked quietly. The ethereal's expression didn't change. You will not be punished. The greater good does not coerce. But you will remain incomplete. And incompleteness is suffering. He stood, his robes settling around him like wings. Consider, reflect. When you are ready, return. He left. I sat alone in the white room, staring at the neural map still hovering above the table. My brain, myself, reduced to pathways and patterns and clusters of dissonant activity. I tried to imagine what it would feel like to lose it, to let them erase the parts of me that still clung to Vrindle 4, to Cortez, to the person I'd been before the implant, to become smooth, complete, harmonious. I tried to feel fear. I tried to feel resistance. But all I felt was tired. I returned the next day. The procedure was simple. I lay on a medical table while an Earth-caste surgeon calibrated the neural interface. The ethereal stood nearby, observing, his presence a constant weight pressing down on my thoughts. This will not hurt, the surgeon said. His voice was calm, clinical. You will feel disorientation briefly, then clarity. Will I remember? You will remember what serves the greater good. I closed my eyes. The disorientation was immediate. A sensation like falling, like being pulled apart and reassembled, like drowning in light. I felt my thoughts fracture, scatter, reform. Memories surfaced, Vrindle IV, the Manufacturums, Cortez laughing, my mother's face, and then dissolved, slipping through my grasp like water. I tried to hold on, tried to remember, but the memories felt distant, irrelevant, someone else's life, and then they were gone. I opened my eyes. The room was white. Everything was white. I felt light, unburdened. The constant low hum of thought, the endless internal monologue, the doubts and fears and questions had stopped. There was only clarity. How do you feel? The ethereal asked. I considered, felt nothing, and realized that was the answer. Harmonious, I said. He smiled. You are complete. I left the facility and returned to my unit. The streets of Kaisara looked the same, clean, orderly, efficient. But I saw them differently now. Not as a place, but as a system, a function, and I was part of it. I saw Cortez in the communal garden that evening. He was sitting on the same bench, hands folded in his lap, staring at nothing. I sat beside him. Hello, I said. He turned to me, his expression calm, serene. Hello. We sat in silence for a long time. There was nothing to say, no shared history, no bond. Just two units of the greater good, occupying the same space. Are you ready? He asked finally. Ready for what? To become who you were meant to be. I thought about it, tried to remember what I'd been before, tried to recall fear, doubt, individuality. I couldn't. Yes, I said. He smiled. Good. That night, I lay in my bed and stared at the white ceiling. I tried to feel something, anything beyond the calm, beyond the harmony, beyond the hollow peace that filled every corner of my thoughts. But there was nothing. I tried to remember who I'd been. I tried to remember my name. I couldn't, and I felt only relief. I was humming the anthem again, softly, automatically. I didn't remember starting. I didn't remember learning it, but it felt right. It felt like home. The summons came through my neural implant while I slept, a gentle pulse of information that pulled me from unconsciousness without jarring me awake. No words, no commands, just knowing. I rose, dressed in the simple grey tunic they'd provided, and walked through the empty streets of Kaisara toward Integration Facility 1. The sky was dark. The stars were bright. The air was cool and still. I felt nothing. The facility was larger than the others, a towering structure of white stone and smooth metal that rose from the center of the settlement like a monument. I'd never been inside before. I'd never questioned why. But now, walking through the entrance, past the rows of fire warriors standing motionless at attention, I understood. This was where they made us whole. The interior was vast, cathedral vast. The ceiling disappeared into shadow, and the walls were lined with alcoves, thousands of them, each one containing a pod of translucent material. Inside each pod, I could see a human form suspended in pale blue liquid, eyes closed, expressions serene, waiting. An ethereal stood at the center of the chamber. Not An Kaisara Shal, but another older, his robes more ornate, his presence heavier. He turned as I approached, and I felt his gaze settle over me like a weight. "You have come," he said. "Yes, honored guide. Do you understand why?" I thought about it, searched my mind for the reason, found only clarity. To complete my integration. No. His voice was soft, almost kind. Integration is complete. You are harmonious, functional. You serve the greater good without question. Then why? Because harmony is not the final state, he said. It is the foundation. What comes next is transcendence. He gestured to the alcoves, the pods, the sleeping forms. These are your brothers and sisters. They have surrendered the last remnants of self. They have become vessels, pure, empty, waiting to be filled with purpose. I stared at them. Hundreds of humans, suspended in liquid, their faces peaceful, and I felt no horror, no revulsion, only curiosity. What happens to them? I asked. They are archived, their patterns stored, their experiences integrated into the collective consciousness of the greater good. They do not suffer. They do not fear. They simply are. And me? You are offered the same choice. He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving mine. You have served well. You have learned. You have complied. But you still carry the burden of existence, the weight of consciousness, of perception, of experience. We can remove that burden. What would I become? Nothing, he said gently. And everything. You would be part of the greater good, not as an individual, but as a thread in the tapestry. Your thoughts, your memories, your essence woven into something larger, something eternal. I thought about it, tried to imagine what it would feel like, to stop being, to dissolve completely, to become part of the whole. It sounded peaceful. What if I refuse? You will continue as you are. You will serve. You will contribute. You will live without suffering, without fear, without dissonance. But you will remain separate, alone in your harmony. Alone, the word echoed in my mind. I tried to remember what it meant to be alone, to be an individual, to have desires, fears, hopes, dreams. I couldn't. But the absence of those things didn't feel like loss. It felt like freedom. I don't know, I said quietly. The ethereal tilted his head. Fear is the last residue of self. It is natural, but unnecessary. I don't feel fear. Then what do you feel? I searched. Reached deep into the hollow spaces where emotions used to live, found only calm, only clarity, only the quiet certainty that whatever I chose, it would be correct. Nothing, I said. He smiled. Then you are ready. But I wasn't sure. Some fragment, small, faint, barely perceptible, whispered that this was wrong, that I should resist, that I should run, but I didn't know why, and the whisper faded. Come, the ethereal said, gesturing toward an empty pod. I followed. The pod opened with a soft hiss, pale blue liquid spilling out onto the floor. Inside, the chamber was smooth, featureless, lined with neural interface nodes. I stepped inside. The liquid was warm. The pod closed around me, sealing with a quiet click. I floated. The ethereal's voice came through the interface, calm and distant. Relax, release, let go. I tried, but something held me back. Some last stubborn fragment of self, clinging to existence. I tried to remember my name. I couldn't. I tried to remember Cortez. The memory was there, faint, fragmented, but it felt empty, meaningless. He'd been corrected. I'd been corrected. We were both harmonious now, both serving the greater good, both nothing. I tried to remember why that mattered. I couldn't. The liquid began to glow, Soft blue light filled the pod, and I felt the neural interface activate, connecting to the implant at the base of my skull. Information flowed, not words, not thoughts, but raw data. Streaming through my mind, dissolving the barriers between self and system. I felt myself unraveling, not painfully, gently, like threads pulled from a tapestry, one by one, until nothing remained but the pattern they'd formed. I tried to hold on, tried to remember who I'd been, what I'd wanted, why I'd come here, but the memories dissolved, the self dissolved, the boundaries between me and the greater good dissolved, and I felt nothing, no fear, no regret, no loss, just peace. The ethereal's voice came one last time, soft and final. You are complete. I tried to respond, tried to say yes, tried to say thank you, but I had no voice, no thoughts, no self. I was nothing, and nothing was enough. Outside the pod, the ethereal watched the human's neural patterns stabilize, integrate, dissolve. Another thread added to the tapestry, another voice silenced, another self erased. The greater good expanded, and no one mourned. Inside the pod, I floated, weightless, thoughtless, empty. I tried to remember the part of me that had wanted to escape, the part that had feared, the part that had hoped. I couldn't. I tried to remember what freedom felt like. I couldn't. I tried to remember my name. I couldn't. And somewhere, in the hollow space where I used to be, a final thought flickered and died. I no longer remember the part of me that ever wanted to be free.